Hey, word is up everybody. So this video is mostly just going to be kind of an FAQ for beginner players because these are some questions I constantly see popping up in Discord, general chat, stuff like that, mid-game, etc. when I'm spectating. So I just want to go over a few common questions that people seem to have, and I will, if you want to skip to specific questions in the chapters down below, you can skip right there. I'll have each thing laid out. It's mostly just going to be me talking. You'll see some graphics mostly over here as I'm talking to kind of clarify. So if you're not watching, you're just listening, just if you need clarification, I'll have some pictures, maybe some text as well to edit what I'm saying as we go. So we'll just jump into it right now. So the attack phase sequence, how does attacking work? When you go into attack step and you go to attack with something, if you have multiple creatures in play, so let's say you have a Sluggle and a Quackle in play, you don't have to attack with both at the same time, nor can you. You attack one at a time in a sequence. So you will say, I attack with Sluggle, your opponent might respond. And then you go, I will now attack with Quackle, your opponent might respond. So you don't have to attack with both at the same time. You attack one at a time until you are finished with your attacks, and then you declare that you go to your end step, and your opponent might have a response there, maybe a tsunami or something after your attack's declared, and then your turn will end. So that's your attack phase. Just remember you do not attack all at once, you attack one at a time, and that's relevant for like say Caprigal. If your Caprigal attacks, kills something, and you get a foamy back from your underworld, that foamy is in attack position, can now attack because you can now go into your next sequence of attacks and attack that foamy. Alright, so the next major thing that people get confused about is what can you do on your turn. So you can play an unlimited amount of your invoke runes, of your divine runes, of your stadiums, technically, potentially, but you wouldn't really want to play more than one stadium a turn. Um, Divine, Evoke, counter, and you can set as many counter runes as you want, up to 4. If you fill all 4 rows of your runes, you cannot activate any more runes until you clear up a space. So if you set 4 counter runes and go to play Nectar of Gods, you will be unable to play that Nectar of Gods because you have no space for the rune to resolve in, if that makes sense. Then in terms of your Elestral actions in your turn, so I like to explain what you can do in a turn with your Spirit deck as you have one enchant action per turn that you can do one of 4 things. You can either normal enchant an Elestral, that is 1 cost. You can normal ascend something, so that is adding a spirit from your Spirit deck to an already existing Elestral, and then placing over it and discarding the original Elestral to play a 2/3, or maybe you're ascending into a 1 for some reason, which is possible. You can draw a card with that enchant action, or you can re-enchant with that enchant action. A couple of notes about each one. So when you normal enchant, that is also considered receiving an enchantment. So a card like, say, Clovey will get the draw card when it's normally played in a normal enchant, as well as if you nexus to it. Nexusing is not giving something an enchantment. Your Ascension, to clarify, is if I have, let's say, my Clovey that I just played in play, and a turn passes it, so now I have an enchant action again, and I go to play Sakurasaur. I will now put an additional spirit to Clovey, but Clovey will not be receiving this because this happens all at once. You'll be putting additional spirit to Clovey and putting Sakurasaur over it and discarding the Clovey into your underworld. Clovey does not receive an extra earth during the Ascension because it is leaving play at the same time, and Sakurasaur is technically receiving that earth. So if you had a 2 cost that said when this receives something, your ascended 2 cost is getting the receiving effect of the ascending spirit. I hope that clarifies that. And again, instead of doing those 2 actions or re-enchanting, you can use that action to draw. And the re-enchant action is you're basically just taking a spirit from your spirit deck and putting it to something that can take that spirit. Maybe you're putting it to a Clovey so that Clovey receives another enchantment. So it's receiving another spirit, it's drawing you another card, because maybe you have another plan for that Clovey in the future. Maybe you have no 2 drops, you can protect the Clovey you're looking for Centaur. So that re-enchant doesn't let you get another, it doesn't let you ascend, doesn't let you put a normal enchantment out, but it lets you put another spirit on something as your enchantment action for the turn. So hopefully that clears up what you can do with what I like to consider an enchantment action, just to clarify. And that enchantment action can be used again to normal enchant something, ascend to something, draw a card for turn, or re-enchant something. That clears up. Hopefully that clears up ascending and your enchanting action. Hey, editing words here, just quick. I never said like, subscribe to this video. Appreciate me appreciating you. I love that you guys are so enthusiastic about this video and all the stuff that I've made so far. If you have any other things you want me to, do FAQs or questions on or answers, put them down below, and back to the video. Have a good one. The next thing is your face down runes. They can be any rune. You can play face down a Hephaestus, a divine rune. You could play face down a Hammer of Hephaestus, an artifact, and you don't have to pay for those costs until you flip them face up. Now, when you play them face down, let's say you play a Nectar of Gods face down, it's an invoke rune, you can still only activate that invoke rune on your turn, or when the timing is correct for it. So if I have an invoke rune face down, I cannot, on my opponent's turn, flip my invoke rune face up and cast it. I must wait until my turn. So when you play those face down things that aren't counter runes, they're just there to mind game your opponent, or maybe you only have one Shield of Achilles and you need to protect it some way from their P-Gust. So you just play a bunch of invokes and gods or divine runes face down to try to mix it up for your opponent so they maybe don't knock out that Shield of Achilles you're trying to save for some play later on. On the topic of artifacts and playing cards face down, when you play an artifact, you can play the artifact, say Hammer of Hephaestus, with 2 fire to get its effect. You can also play the Hammer of Hephaestus, say, with 2 lightning. Now, it won't do anything. It'll just be an empowered Elestral with it that doesn't do anything. But now you have something where you can say, okay, I'm going to pull these 2 lightning with my Spark Kit to Nexus something else. And now I'm Nexusing off that hammer. So I have a reason to maybe misenchant my hammer. And you can do that, but you don't need to. It's a toss-up. Like, maybe you really need that effect, so you need to misenchant it. The other thing is when you play an artifact or a stadium or any other rune, you can only play its cost, and that's it. Like, you can't play less than a cost, you can't play more than a cost. Unless we're talking divine runes that specifically say you can enchant up to 3, and with Aeolus, 4 of its element. So you cannot play a Hammer of Hephaestus and put 3 Vipyro on it. You cannot play a Hammer of Hephaestus and put 1 Vipyro on it. But you can play Hammer of Hephaestus with 2 Vipyro or 2 of any spirit effectively. You cannot play a Stadium with multiples. The only thing that you can multiply play in the rune thing that is not its cost will be the gods, where you can do any amount between 1 and 3, or maybe 4 with Aeolus. So I hope that clarifies that. The next thing is if your artifact runs out of spirits, it is destroyed. So if your Hammer of Hephaestus goes from 2 to 1 or 0 spirits from a Nexus effect, that hammer will be destroyed immediately. Last thing I have in my notes is for this video is if you deck out to 0 spirits, you do not lose the game. You do not lose the game at 0 spirits until you are forced to expend a spirit either through an attack or a card effect. So if you go to 0, but you have a huge board because let's say they eruptioned you from 3 to 0, and you have a Majesty in play and they have 1 spirit left and an attacker with 2 spirits in play, and you attack with your Majesty with 3 and you make them expend 1, they're at 0, you're at 0. You can't play any cards, but you can use what you have on the board to potentially win the game. And remember, you can take spirits off of your Elestrals to potentially cast runes that you have. But that will also mean that if you're taking those spirits off those Elestrals to cast the runes you have, that if your Elestral goes below its enchantment requirement, it will be destroyed. So if you have a Majesty on 5 and you want to play Nectar of Gods and you have no spirits in your deck, you can take 2 off the Majesty to play your Nectar of Gods. This is a very rare scenario, but it might be reasonable to draw 2 cards. But if you have Majesty with 3 and you want to play Nectar Gods, you can play Nectar Gods removing 2 from Majesty to do that, but Majesty will die in the process to play runes. This is usually a last-ditch effort or because you mismatched your spirits and need to grab 1 color from something. But yeah, that's it for this FAQ video. As I get more things popping up in the Discord channel questions, I'm just noting things down. Things I see multiple times, I write them down and I'll clarify in future videos. So yeah, I hope that helped somebody. Other than that, you guys have a great day. Peace.